We will start now. Good day, everyone. I'm sherelee, and welcome to our webinar on climate crimes and human rights violations of fighting Sasol in Southern Africa. We've decided to put together this webinar because we are approaching a Sasol AGM this Friday. So we want to make people aware of the atrocities and the issues that we face because of Sasol. So we have a few speakers lined up for this webinar. It's not going to be too long, just an hour. And we'll have some questions later on in the last 10 minutes of the webinar that you can write in. So we urging people that while the participants or while people are speaking, to please write down your questions in the chat, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. So without wasting further time, I'm going to introduce you to ilhamrawoot, who is going to give you an introduction.
Thanks, Sherelee. Thanks everybody for being on. It's really great that there are so many people who are interested in the issues around Sasol and the coming AGM. So I'm ilhamrawoot, and I work with Justice Ambiental, Friends of the Earth Mozambique, and I'm we're one of the organizations that have been working with a few other organizations who will be speaking, we're organizations who work on Sasol throughout the year in different areas. So for example, us at Dany.ja, we work on Sasol in Mozambique, and Veja works on Sasol in Sasolburg, which they'll tell you more about. And then they also, the way that we approach the great thing about this AGM time, is that it's once when all of us who are working on Sasol in our different capacities, like we come together and we form a joint action against Sasol. So throughout the year we work on, okay, sorry. So the kind of work that we do around the AGM, or that we have done for the last 3 years, which is how long we've been participating, is through protest action, which we found the police have been very hostile to outside the actual AGMs, and also put forward resolutions and other forms of shareholder activism. We try and get as much media on board as we can. We also would like to go beyond the types of media that we get right now, that we get attention from right now, which is mostly business media, to make it sort of more mainstream. And we also have so we ask questions inside the AGM, but we found that they're not very responsive to our questions or very friendly to our questions. And there've been situations where we've had to stand up and shout and say, actually, no, you can't carry on, you need to answer our questions. And also with we've held meetings with them where we sort of one-on-one meetings, which are not that easy to get. So when we do hold them, we held one a year ago, it was Dany and groundWork, and we held one with a few of the vice presidents at Sasol. Again, very hostile, and actually one of the vice presidents, the head of upstream gas, when we talked about, I asked him about, investing in Mozambique, where there's a high level of corruption, and gas investments have not benefited people. Still one of the poorest countries in the world, most unequal countries in the world, which Dany will tell you about a bit later. His literal response was, we do what we need to with the government, and what they do with the money is not our problem. And nonchalant attitude to corruption is highly disconcerting, if, at best. They've also got a very good greenwashing strategy going. They've been very hostile with any kind of activism that we've tried so far. So with this year's AGM coming up, we wanted to bring attention to the work that we do, but also to be able to create a bigger campaign where we can take the work against Sasol beyond the AGM, and we can form something where we have sort of a group struggle against them, bringing in the different capacities that we have. So yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you, Ilham, for that. Okay, so we're gonna go straight to our first speaker, which is Desmond de Souza. Desmond is the coordinator of the South Durban Community Environmental Alliance, which is campaigning against offshore oil and gas exploration by Sasol of the south coast of KZN, and who has campaigned against Sasol in the South Durban previously. So Des, you have 10 minutes.
I don't know if you've seen the chat group. I just said.
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, look, I don't know if you saw the chat group where I wrote there. We should introduce everyone so we know who's on the call.
No, there's too many people to introduce, so we're just going to introduce the speakers.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to take it from the local to from the local community struggles to the national struggle and the international struggle with Sasol. Firstly, let me just say that I work for Sasol. So I know Sasol on the inside and on the outside. And when I was on the inside, whether it was in Secunda, following, most of us worked at Secunda from the community where I come from, because there were boilermakers and welders. And I found out the type of people that we were working with really didn't care a damn about the environment. And the same thing happened when I worked at the local plant here. They violated all the environmental laws, dumped all the chemicals, all the solvents, all the cyanide, all the acrylonitrile around the local communities and into the rivers. So that's been Sasol on the inside, and they got rid of me in 1998. But they unleashed the monster on the streets. So that was good what they did. But just to say, I said, we've been fighting Sasol as well, because while I was employed by them, I was also fighting them on the inside and on the outside. And Sasol, the chrome plant, gassed out the entire community, all the school kids in South Durban. And we raised them up, organized the children, organized the schools, and we protested outside the gates and shut them down, and they disappeared to Sasolburg. Sorry, Samson. So they came to Sasolburg, running away from us because we were very hot here in Durban. That was the first experience about Sasol, about Sasol's chrome plant in Durban, and also Sasol's acrylonitrile plant. That people were affected with their health. So both the plants affected people's health and well-being. And in the case of the chrome plant, a lot of the kids that were affected, they had a lot of problems with asthma and breathing problems. And likewise with the Sasol acrylonitrile plant, that affected people's respiratory organs, but also they were losing their hips and they had problems with heart stresses. And then they have another plant storage facility in Durban called Natcos, in a joint venture with Total and Sasol. And those storage facilities, their pipes have been rotten, the tanks have been leaking, and we've been giving them hell, like hell. Taking photos of all the stuff, but also taking air samples and exposing them. And I've been working with Samson them in Sasolburg and really sharing some of the information around, and saw the devastation in Sasolburg and in Secunda. But what also drove me to take it to the international level was that Sasol built a plant in Lake Charles. And I was hoping that we'll get somebody from there on the call. It's unfortunately they're not on the call. But I visited Lake Charles at least 3 times, even during Hurricane Harvey. And the devastation where the poor folks, the Afro-American people, they were forced out of the land. They weren't allowed to even go to their graveyards. Sasol blocked them from entering the graveyards of their families. And Sasol was highly polluting the area. And as you're all aware, it was a huge scandal with the overpricing. But they don't talk about the impact that it had on poor communities out there in Lake Charles, which was devastating. And there's a film that that they've done. The guys came out here and done a film about the cancer and all the problems with health that people in Lake Charles had experienced. But I thought, you know what, Sasol would have the end of me, but Sasol did not realize that I was going nowhere. I was still around. And they started about 4 years ago, four years ago around the oil and gas in a joint venture with ENI, which was the Italian Oil Corporation. And Sasol, because they knew I was in the forefront of all the struggles in Durban, tried to hide behind closed doors and push any Italians in the front. And any tried to undermine and circumvent the law in regard to who had the majority shares and who had the responsibility. And we exposed them and got the information that, in fact, any should not be talking to us, and rather that Sasol should be coming to talk to us. So Ilham, the guy that came that you met, the upstream director, John Harris, that came out of London, came to Durban, and Samson Nemoolian, and we packed the community hall and gave them a lashing and a thrashing about it, that he was shocked. And we asked him about all the atrocities that Sasol had created all over the world, but also in Durban and in Johannesburg, and Secunda and the Haifa. So when they started to talk about the oil and gas, they tried to hide the information and not get us, and they thought they could get government on their side, not knowing that we'd done a lot of probing and doing a lot of researching around it. And we found that even during the seismic testing, the amount of marine life that was washing up dead on the coast was quite high. Suddenly we were seeing dolphins washing up dead and whales washing up dead, and we knew seismic testing was taking place on our coastline. What Sasol thought that they could come through here and have meetings with 4 people in Richards Bay and in Durban and in Pouchepson and get away with it. And then they realized that we packed those community halls with hundreds and thousands of people and didn't allow them to contribute or even present anything about oil and gas. And we told them, bring Sasol around here. Don't tell us about the consultants. And some of these consultants are really hell-bent on only getting money. And and any price is good for them. And as a result, we had to concentrate on getting John Harris and dealing with them. And so we dealt with them in Durban, they haven't come back. And then we had to get all the resources to put together a huge comprehensive comment and appeal. And that response hasn't come through. But then going to the Sasol AGM, I went to 2 Sasol AGM. The first one was 2 years ago, 2018, and that wasn't good because they didn't allow me to speak and all that in the meeting. But last year I went back and they got the other side of me, and when they gave me a chance to speak, I told them as it is. And I think that's what it is. Sasol is under the cosh. We must not be afraid to say things that affect people and say it in the way ordinary people speak about it, because this has a huge impact. This company has been affecting people all over. When you look at the health impacts it had in Zambia communities, in Sasolburg, and the children that they affected here and left their victims behind in South-The, in Isipingo, and in the plants around here, and all the marine life that they've killed. We can't be playing around with these guys. We must tell it like it is. And things in Nigeria to get away with it. We must be able to come together and speak about these things and also to expose them. The communities that we've been working with all along the coast has spoken enough. They don't want any oil and gas exploration on our coastline. We have seen the devastation. We have seen the devastation of refineries in South Durban. And I think the same applies in other parts of the country, for example, in Sasolburg or even the ones in Secunda. They have devastations, they affect people's lives, they turn people's lives upside down, because when you are sick with all those chemicals, it's not easy to live with all those chemicals when you are sick. So I think herein lies the rub, is that we have to speak without fear or favor. We have to say things that might be very uncomfortable. But it's time to tell the company to go. It's time to tell the company to move away from oil and gas, to move away from coal. We have the chance. The whole world is calling out for that. We have to say the same. If we can't say the same, then we are in support of that. We need to say it without any botheration of what's going to happen. If they sue us, that's fine. If they want to take us on, that's fine. But I think for too long, the company has got away with it, and Sasol has been instrumental in the devastation of the environment and people. And the chances are they ain't going to change as long as we as people come together, whether we in South Africa, whether in Mozambique, wherever we are in the world, is to unite around this issue and to say that Sasol needs to move away from fossil fuels completely, full stop. And it must be done now. We must demand a just transition plan that's going to move them away from coal, move them away from gas. We don't want them to drill in our ocean. We've got the best beaches, we've got enough jobs. We don't need a company like Sasol to come and destroy what we have that is good and come and bring their rotten stuff here and destroy us. So my appeal is that that we know the company, we know it well, we've documented the information, and we are prepared to share that information with everybody. So thank you very much, appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you so much, Des. Like I said before, we encourage people that if they have questions, please type them out in the chat and we'll get to the questions in the last 10 minutes. I also want to inform people that we are recording this meeting. So without further delay, we go to our next speaker, which is Malebogeng Matafeng from Virja. Malebogeng is an activist with the Vaal Environmental Justice Alliance who lives in Zandela fighting against Sasol Secunda oil refinery. Thank you, Malebogeng.
Hello, everyone. My name is Malebogeng Matafeng from Zandela, Sasolburg. I'm living near Sasol Oil and Gas Company. And the thing that Sasol is doing to us, it's something that is very painful because of each and every day we experience the flaring and also the bad smell. Children are sick. Most of the people are suffering with asthma and also eye problems and also the sinuses. I'm also one of the people who are struggling from sinuses. So if only Sasol can think that there are people living near that oil refinery, they're not thinking about the people's health, because of each and every day we wake up with this white thing in the windows and also in the gardens. So what is Sasol is doing to us is very painful, because of even the youth in Sasol or people who are staying in Sasol, they are not working in the company. They are hiring people from other provinces because of there is a medical checkup, and when the people from Sasolburg, they go for a medical checkup, most of them they fail because they have those respiratory diseases because of what is Sasol is doing in the community. One other thing is that they are not doing anything. We were asking for a 24-hour clinic. There are no nurses in, there are no much nurses in the community where I'm staying. There's a little of nurses. So if only Sasol can think about doing something like a social labor plan in Sasolburg or in Zambia, if we can check, they promised to build a clinic, but then when you look at that clinic they have built, it's not enough for the people around in Zambia because it's only one clinic, it's only two clinics, and the other one they don't have full equipment to help the people around Zambia. So if Sasol can at least do something for the people in Zambia and stop this pollution and think about people's lives, I think it will be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Malabaheng, for your comments. We'll move on to our next speaker now, which is Daniel Ribeiro. Daniel is a program officer at Ambiental, Friends of the Earth Mozambique, fighting the struggle against extractives in Mozambique, where Sasol is currently involved in current and future gas extraction. Thank you, Daniel.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just going to share a few points on the screen here. Okay, so I'll be speaking about Sasol in Mozambique. And Sasol has one of the strongest involvements is in the gas, especially in the Nyambane province by the Bazarutu archipelago. If not, and really have more than a decade of information of how this is playing out. So if one looks at, it's a usual story with extractives, huge promises at the beginning and a completely different reality. So if you look at the World Bank's projected benefits for Mozambique with the gas when Sasol came in 2010, 11, they were expected over $50 million per year. The actual reality is less than $14 million a year, but that's still a fake number once we look into the data. And also, if you look at it, it's only achieved 7% of the 25-year projection and already done more than 15 years of that. So it's completely not meeting targets. Another thing that's also interesting
Hey,
is the
Danny,
way—
can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Can you change the slides as you?
Yes. Are you seeing it or not? Is it changing?
No. And
Okay.
it's me.
Okay, let me see what's going on here.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Stuck with the first slide then.
It's just been on the first slide.
Oh, damn.
No, it went to the second one now.
Now, when you clicked on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a delay maybe, no? So let me try again. Is it gone to the second slide?
No.
No.
Okay, not important. Let's just go to, I'll stop share, no worries. Anyway, so if one looks at just what's going on, you notice Sasol, as we've seen with other presenters, there is this fundamental lack of justice and morality in their operations. For example, Sasol was caught on reporting only reporting 2/3 of the production. So what it was reporting internally was far higher than what it was reporting to the government because they had to pay taxes and production taxes and a whole bunch of other factors. So that was clearly a problem. The other thing that Sasol has been doing it's been selling its gas at a quarter of the world market prices. So what Sasol does is it has Sasol Mozambique, but then it has Sasol, the main company in South Africa. So what it does, it sells it at a ridiculous price to itself, and therefore the revenues and profits are almost non-existent and minimal. Right? The other thing they do, and they've been also caught doing transfer pricing, and that is mean you inflate your capital costs, your operating costs, and you basically try and make the operation within Mozambique almost as minimized as possible any kind of revenues and transfer all the benefits to the main company, which is a South African Sasol. And these numbers are quite big and scary. Just to give an example, there's been years where the running operational cost has been 70% of 70% of its revenues, which is ridiculously high. Actually, when there was a government independent audit to look at, for example, one of the sectors they looked at was recoverable costs. So recoverable costs are costs that you can deduct from your profit margins. And they reported, for example, in 2017, that they had recoverable costs of almost $150 million. During the audit, it was discovered that only $50.5 million were actually recoverable costs. The rest was manipulation of their revenues to not have to pay taxes. 2008, the same thing. 2014, over $214 million was reported by Sasol, but only during the audit, only 49.3 was actually shown to be actual recoverable costs. Another thing you notice in them, in how, and it's quite blatant. For example, in the extension project in Nyasoro and Teman, Sasol even stated that this extension will be unprofitable and not contribute much to Mozambique's revenue, and it actually might operate at a loss. So think about this: they're going to invest billions in expanding new fields, and they're going to be losing money. Why invest? But clearly, they are manipulating and being very. And this is just an example, in economic terms, of the morality of the company, of how the company actually operates, and all this. Then, of course, if you look at, okay, what about the benefits that this investment in Mozambique has been in the gas? So first of all these revenues that go to government, the fact that you manage to hide from them or not contribute what you're meant to contribute, that affects directly what goes into the Mozambique government and what they can do for social development. But even if the real amount comes in, or the projected amount comes in, if you look at how Mozambique is divided, only 3% of production tax goes to social development. So even if we do get the right incomes coming, it's not the priority of the government, and it's not going to be contributing. The area still has over 50% of the population living under absolute poverty, with living basically with less than $1.25 a day. And a lot of the social improvements that have been gained in assessments and studies done by different groups, it's been shown that the tourism industry has been the bigger player in improving people's lives than the gas. So there has been very to minimal social benefits that you can associate with the actual Sasol gas project, given the scale, given the investment, and the promises. So it's quite a dismal reality on the ground. A lot of this work and research has been done by credible groups like CIP from Mozambique, EAS from Mozambique, which is an economic think tank, and all that. So it's not just us activists talking about it. This is there's other groups, more mainstream research-based groups showing the same reality. But this is not the only place where, so Sasol also recently, most people heard, they were planning on expanding to the shallow waters, which is basically the tropical islands of Bazarutu, and one of the most, it's been designated as an important marine mammal area of global importance, and it's a national marine reserve. And they were going to go into the area. And when they were exploring these options, a lot of experts asked for a strategic environment assessment, a CEA, and they weren't going to do it because they said the contract did not require it, even though experts saying this area is very sensitive and needs one. At the end of the day, what made them step out wasn't, and even though they stepped out claiming to be worried about the environment, a lot of these issues were identified when they first did the EIA, when they first came into Mozambique, and that EIA showed that this was too sensitive. You cannot explore gas in the marine reserve. So them coming back and saying, oh, we did further assessments and realized it's not viable is rubbish, because the real thing was a campaign. There was a huge campaign by local fishing association, the tourism sector, local residents. They raised a lot of awareness and put a lot of pressure, and they linked up well with international groups. We supported this campaign. We managed to get some of the representatives to the Sasol AGM, and we gave some information, and it was very interesting. However, we did not formally link up with the campaign, more for the approach. A lot of their approach was look for petroleum elsewhere, not here, find it somewhere else. And we don't agree with that. We don't agree with, if something is not fair, if something is detrimental to you, it's also detrimental to your neighbor, and there should be some more solidarity. So even though we supported the campaign, it was a bit too strategically focused on their local ground, and they weren't, so that's why we just kept but anyway, finally they did manage to get victory, which is an amazing victory, and Sasol relinquished the blocks 16 and 19, which were in the marine reserves. Just quickly to end, this is not the only areas where Sasol is active. So Sasol has a further 3,000 square kilometers in the nearby province of onshore gas that they exploring at the moment, looking for getting an idea of the reserves and hoping to expand. And in northern Mozambique, of the offshore Ngosh Basin, they also have a 5,145 square kilometer area that they're doing concession. Actually, there's two. There's A5A and A5B, and they're 25.5% shareholder, with Eni being the biggest shareholder. But also, it's not the only thing that is quite important to note about Sasol. They're also exploring the option of constructing a pipeline linking the gas in the north to the existing pipeline in the south. This project has lost a bit of interest because of the conflict up north and the complications of the security of and the issues around the pipeline, but it's still very little information is available, but it still pops up every once in a while. But another aspect of Sasol that makes them a problematic group is they have actually numerous patents and technologies that they ownership of, especially around LNG, that makes them quite an important partner in a lot of these concessions, and makes them a bit of quite a player in the gas sector. The reality in Sasol is they've been constantly issues popping up of the unfair deal they have in Mozambique, the way they manipulate the economics to benefit themselves, and how the project is not contributing, and the impacts on the ground is clear. We're not having, there's not helping social, any social benefits are coming out of there. So yeah, that's a quick run through. We can go into more detail in discussions later on if you want to go into more details on any issue. And sorry about the PowerPoint not working. I have no idea what happened. It's worked in the past with others. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Ilham has shared the PowerPoint in the chat, so you can save it from there.